and it's all yours.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Out of respect for everyone's time, we're going to go ahead and get started and call the meeting to order at 10:03 this morning. Like Daryl said, for roll call and introductions, we do not do a roll call for everybody. So we're just asking you to go and sign in. You can either go into the chat, the link that Daryl provided, or you can go to the ESInet webpage, click on sign in, and sign in with your name and your agency. If everybody could do that today, that would be great. All right. Our first item on the agenda, project update. Tracy, would you give us an update on those installs that we have left?
Yeah, so as of today, we are still waiting for the Schreiber Air Force Base and Cheyenne Mountain. We've reached out to see if, I think it was Schreiber needs a circuit. They didn't have that as of this week, and Cheyenne Mountain is still kind of pending too. So we're almost there, but we still have those two holdouts that we are, we're pushing as much as we can to get them taken care of. As far as anything else that's new, everybody's aware of the new area code popping up for Colorado. I believe the date is June 17th. So that's kind of the hot project that we're working on now. We initially had 20 PSAPs in Colorado that we know could not handle the 10 digits. We were trying to get some information and work with Intrado to see if any of those have updated since we kicked off the project. We didn't keep track of whether or not they upgraded along the way. So what we're going to do is just notify all 20. I think Cindy suggested, Daryl, I work with you as far as who the PSAPs are and contacts that we might reach out to. But Lumen has drafted a letter letting them know this is coming and what the requirements are, so that if any of them need to update equipment or work with various entities to get to the point where they can accept 10 digits, we would like to let them know that sooner rather than later, especially if there's an expense that's going to come along with it. So we're just going to go ahead and notify all of them, knowing that some of them probably won't be impacted. And that the plan is to send that notification out on Monday.
So Tracy, I know that last month we had talked to Cindy about providing that list to the ESInet group. So maybe we could help reach out to them and have those conversations as well.
Okay.
You know if she was still planning on doing that?
It would be me that will do it now. We were hoping to condense the list a little bit because some of them definitely aren't going to be impacted, but we haven't been able to get the data that helps us understand which ones might still need to be impacted. So I'm going to I'll send you the whole list. As we reach out to them, our gut feeling is at least half of them have already upgraded, and they would know that, and that will narrow down the list. But I can send that. Tina, should I send it to you today?
Yep, that would be great.
Okay, I'll do it right after this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And then I can share the letter that we believe should go to the PSAPs.
Okay, that'll be very helpful, and we'll help on our end just to make sure that that all gets taken care of before that overlay happens.
Okay, I'll make sure I do that right after this call.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Other than that, unless you guys have anything that Cindy and I should have our eye on, I think that's kind of our big process right now.
Okay, so there's a new one. Oh, go ahead.
So Tracy, you mentioned Schreiber and Cheyenne Mountain. Is Buckley taken care of now?
Let me look at that one.
Because the progress report you sent over said KP8 testing not passing pending vendor support. So is that still under work, or has that been completed?
Let me double check on that one. I can do that right now because I did get an email exchange with Buckley. They were short staffed. I know that, and they wanted to have a call because they were ready to test. That one, they reached out to me on the 7th. Yeah, I don't have confirmation that that one's done. So there are 3.
Okay.
I'm supposed to, they said, can you please give us a couple of weeks? We're short staffed. And I have them on my radar to contact Monday as well. So I'll update that.
Hey, Daryl and Tracy, this is Kevin Brown with DISA. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So I think the KP8 test, they resolved that issue. That was configuration setting in the CPE. So I think that's been resolved. I think the last issue was their second alley circuit was failing. It could be equipment on the CPE side. And I think that's the piece that they've not been able to test out just because they're short staffed. But I think that's the last unresolved issue there.
And I can confirm that this afternoon. I've had some conversations with Buckley. So if they're ready to test it out, then we'll certainly wrap that up as quickly as we can.
Yeah, perfect. And then my other question on Schriever, so I'm looking at the screen, shows pending circuit. Is that, so who owns the issue to resolve that? Is that something that the base needs to do, or is that something that the Lumen's trying to work through?
I have down in my notes that we're waiting for the base on our end. Lumen we're ready.
Okay. Well, what we can do, we don't need to hold this up, but Tracy, I'll get with you and Cindy Berry kind of offline and see if we have struggles getting the right POC or whatever on base.
Yep.
And see if we can get that resolved.
Yep.
I'll
I'll mark that down to reach out to them this afternoon as well.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
And I think Cheyenne Mountain, they're on hold because they may be reconfiguring to where they're a backup to Peterson, a secondary Peterson, kind of in concert with El Paso, Teller County there. So
Right.
If that pans out, and I think they're really close to making that happen, then they'll probably stand down their on-site 911 system. So circuits and LPGs will not be required, but they're waiting on some internal approvals yet to wrap that up 100%.
Right. I have that marked as yellow because we are pending more information and progress from Cheyenne Mountain itself.
Roger that. Okay. Very good.
Well, and we also, this is Wes, we also need El Paso to go ahead and get that 100 megabit going as well to coordinate all those. So anyway, with a number of things are still open for Cheyenne.
Yeah. Thanks, Wes.
And something else I wanted to point out, not related to the military bases, but related to the 7-digit versus 10-digit dialing, is that I sent out a notice probably about a year and a half ago. And this is probably my fault. I should have sent out some additional follow-up reminders after that. But it's not just the area code changing that's requiring that. It's the implementation of 988. Because any area code that has an exchange that starts with 988, obviously that won't work if 988 is also the first 3 digits you dial to get a crisis emergency hotline. So that's been a requirement by June of 2022 for a while now. So there's a couple different reasons why it's necessary to go to 10-digit dialing, and hopefully we'll be able to get everyone up to speed prior to that cutover.
Agreed.
All right. Does anyone have any other questions about those last locations that need to get installed and migrated over? Okay. Next item on the agenda. Tracy, are you tracking any open tickets for migrated PSAPs related to ESInet?
No, I don't have any. We had talked last month, I think it was the Vail Aspen, talked to Vicki a little bit, and they have not had the problem reoccur. Also with Summit County, they are no longer seeing the issues. So that one, I think the Summit County was more just some training and user error, but they're not seeing either location aren't seeing the issues anymore.
This is Jerry from Summit County. I'm not sure where you got the impression that we're still not having the issue, but right now we're working with Vesta and Motorola. So it's back on their court. So basically what's happening is, they find some things and it goes back to Lumen, and from Lumen it goes back to Motorola. And so we're back and forth, but the issues does still exist.
So it is still not being able to transfer?
It's not transferring correctly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let me circle back with my technical folks too and confirm where we showed that it was taken care of.
Oh, sure. Thanks.
And Jerry, is that happening with every transfer, or is it a sporadic issue?
It's a sporadic issue. So the problem is that it happens the most with ski patrol. So when somebody is hurt on the mountain, we end up in somebody else's. One time we ended up at a bank in somewhere in the Green Village or something like that, and some other times we end up at somebody's personal phone when we try to transfer the call. So
Okay, well, let me make a note of that, Gary, because I'll not only confirm where we got the information, but I'll work with Cindy to see who we can pull into this to take care of it for you.
yeah, no. So right now, what's been happening again is it starts with Lumen. You guys do some troubleshooting, and then it gets handed over to, in this case, Motorola.
Okay.
They do a little bit of troubleshooting. They find some stuff, but the issue still exists. I would say that right now, Lumen could be on standby in case Motorola finds something else. But if we can still track the issue, that'll be good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, and then Tracy, I know last month Joel brought up an issue about their 911 to 911 transfer. I did get a ticket number. Do you have any follow-up on that one?
And who is Joel with? Sorry, I'm still
Sorry,
learning
Adams
players.
No, that's okay. It's Adams County.
Okay. I don't have anything in my box as far as an update on the ticket, but I can take that as an action item and circle back with my team.
Okay, that would be great.
Yep.
Do we have anyone from AdCom on the line?
Hey, Tracy, this is Wes. You can swing back with me on that. Vicki Hyatt was working with the Viper Tech over at AdCom.
Okay.
There were several different things going on. One was with ESInet. One was with not ESInet, by the way. It was a PRI issue. So we can, let's work on trying to close the gap there.
Will do. And yep.
Yeah, I know the tech over there that works on it, so we can get with her very quickly.
Perfect.
All right, thank you. All right, do we
We'll
have?
add into this tracker too, so that we have it.
Yep.
All right, do we have any PSAPs or authorities on that believe you have an open ticket item that they should be tracking that is ESInet related that we didn't discuss today? Perfect. Tracy, any other project updates that you'd like to provide?
Nope, not at this time, unless anyone else from Lumen has something.
All right, great. On the agenda, moving on to old business. The first item is the proposed tariff amendment for ECATs. I know that we pushed this back to, I think, a date of March 2nd to get some feedback to Tim. Tim, are you on the call?
Well, apparently not. Tina, Daryl.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go.
There he is.
Sorry about that. I got two different screens with two different mutes. I'm not sure what's going on. So anyway, yes, I have gotten some feedback. So if there's more, please do send it my way. I'm working on an updated draft that I can circulate to folks soon.
Okay. Tim, just for my own information, do we have like a drop dead date when this needs to be completed, or would we be okay pushing it back to the April meeting for final discussion or feedback?
I mean, there's no hard and fast deadline. No, it's just going to take some time to work through the process at the commission. So to the extent that we want to get this implemented sooner than later, it'd be nice to get it filed. But no, we're not in a rush. We don't want to put something forward that isn't acceptable to everyone.
Okay. Would you be comfortable providing a date that you could have the revised draft out so we know when to look for that?
Well, are there any other folks that were considering weighing in but just haven't had a chance and want to put that placeholder out there for me? Or if not, I'm sure I can turn this around next week.
Okay. It looks like Joseph, are you raising your hand?
Yeah. My understanding is the intent that this would go into effect next year when we would have the surcharge, the statewide surcharge adjusted to account for the increase in the tariff charges. And so I think that would provide our date deadlines, but I think we want to be well in advance of that, because the surcharge has to be adopted. Is it October 1st, Darrell?
It is, and the tariff change isn't necessarily tied to that. That may be a matter of discussion for the group. If the 911 community wants to see these changes in the tariff sooner rather than later, and it's acceptable to people to pay for the first few months without getting reimbursed through the state 911 surcharge, then you certainly could go ahead with it now. Or if you want to wait until actually March 1st, because any changes we make to the state 911 surcharge won't be shown in your revenues until March of 2023. But that's a long time to wait, and I know a lot of people were anxious to get this change made. So that may be something the 911 community wants to discuss through this forum.
If I understand it, are you suggesting that individual 911 authorities could elect to take the service earlier, or would everybody have to take it at the same time?
No, everybody would have to take it at the same time because it's a statewide cost average.
Kim, did you have some feedback to provide?
From our meeting last month, it was stated that there would be something in the tariff that would allow a schedule for adoption that took into consideration everyone's current ECATS contract. And I say everyone, those that have those current contracts. So statewide average, yes, but maybe not as everybody paying at the same time, if I remember that correctly. Wes,
Yeah,
does that sound right?
Yeah,
Or
we did
Tim,
talk.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We did talk about that. Yes, that if we wanted to phase it in similar to how we did the statewide transition, we certainly open to doing something like that. I don't think we'd spread it over 18 months like we did before, but yeah, I think we could accommodate that kind of situation. And I know, Wes, we were waiting to hear back on how many folks had that and what the status was, but I don't know if you've had a chance to get that information just so we could figure out what the timing could be.
Yeah, there are 40 RDDMs out there, so that means they're touching quite a few PSAPs with ECATS currently. And we're fine-tuning the internal statement of work that we have to do with Entrado now with our engineering guys. But if there's 40 RDDMs, that's quite a number of sites out there, Kimberly, that we've got already.
Do we know what a term is? Like, what's the longest term that anybody might have?
They didn't. I do not have that.
Okay.
It would be one foul swoop to bring those over. What we're talking about with Entrado is making sure that the equipment, the RDDM, is covered with service warranty, and that we can comfortably switch that over and have a warranty, a service for it for in the foreseeable future.
But I would presume these contracts are annual.
Well, I haven't done ECATS any. Well, actually, Tina, we did one for Well County, but that's all. Typically, I think most of those are probably 60 months. Maybe Kimberly, can you maybe speak for the group when you've signed up with the Viper?
I didn't.
ECATS?
I didn't. It's too expensive. So we never did sign up for the ECATS. So I guess even though there's a lot of contracts that are out there because of the terms, I think that is a critical part of it, is knowing when those terms expire. Maybe Entrado or whomever could offer a refund back to that agency, but somehow that agency, or just even a credit back for the part, because the agency may be paying for all those reports that are on the other side of the demarcation that isn't going to be included with this ECAT offering. So perhaps it's a credit for whatever value that would continue to pay for those other types of reporting that they're doing. So those contracts I think are going to be important to the big picture of this when you guys file.
I agree with that.
Yep, I do too. And, yes, Steve Deloach is working with Tiffany and the folks over there at ECATS to iron out those details. And I trust that they can do that pretty darn quick, Tim, so we can get that
Okay.
teed up for you.
Okay.
And this is Daryl. I remember one of the things we talked about too is that those PSAPs or 911 authorities that have contracts for ECATS now may want to look at their contracts and see if there's an early termination clause for convenience. I think Bruce, when he was with Arapahoe County, said that he looked at their contract and it had that kind of clause in it. So some of the 911 authorities or PSAPs may be able to get out of their ECATS contract early to start purchasing ECATS through the tariff.
Now, and I can't speak for those individual ones. If you've gone through, say, Converge One or Entrado Direct on that, I would encourage folks to go ahead and we'll have those separate discussions with Randy over there at Entrado on that, and seeing what he'll forgive as far as on contractual terms. But it might be good for the individual users that have those contracts now to ask their vendor, be it Entrado, Converge One, or whichever.
Yep, I think that's a good idea, Wes. And you're right. Well does have one, and I don't remember what those contract terms are. I'll have to look that up and see what our options are. But like Kimberly said, I do think it's a really important part moving forward with the amendment is to make sure that that is addressed. And then, Kathy, go ahead.
Okay, if I recall correctly, because the authority here in Arapahoe, we have ECATS. I think our contract was initially approved for 4 years, but because of what is going on with this, it was back down to 1 year. And I believe there's also a termination for convenience clause in it.
Okay, that's good information to have. And I think, those of us that have ECATS will just have to hold some accountability to make sure that we're taking care of the right stuff.
But good point. Hey, but Kathy, just a quick question back to that. Is that through Converge One or direct with Entrado? Even if it has a convenience clause in, do you recall?
That I don't know. I don't have the contract in front of me, and I'd have to check with the person who has stepped into Converge One, Bruce says. Thank you, Bruce.
Then, yeah. Then, hey, Kathy, Bruce, you guys would need to make sure that that's understood with Converge One. That's an issue between Entrado and Converge One at this point, I think.
Okay,
So
thank you.
This is Rich Johnston. I think you need to be concerned with who your contract is with. If it's with Converged One and you have a termination of convenience, that's what you're concerned with. I would say if Converge One doesn't have one with Entrado, that's Converged One's concern, not the PSAPs, not the agency.
Hey Wes, this is Jeff.
Yes.
Yeah, the ones we did with CenturyLink were annual, and we did one with Broomfield that was annual with Converge One.
Okay. Well, that's encouraging. If we could just double check that, that may not be a big hurdle then.
All right, just back to Tim. If you would like to provide that updated draft next week, then maybe we can send it back out for review. Does that sound good?
It does.
Okay. Bruce had a question in chat. Would the ECATS tariff amendment be for 911 analytics only? For instance, the Arapahoe contract also tracks non-emergency. Does anybody know about that? Tim?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know, Wes or Rich or somebody.
It's a bundle that we got from Tiffany that does track wireless calls. It is focused, I believe, on the 911 sessions. Now there is a higher level that is not being included, and that's what the admin calls is probably what Bruce has through their version of ECATS.
So then would we have to run two separate?
No, you should have, one report would cover wireless, and it does identify all the wireless calls with the metrics pertaining to that. But then it also covers a base metric, if you will, bundle on your 911 ESInet sessions. But I'll double check. I don't believe it covered the admin lines. I think that was a higher grade of service.
Okay, yeah, Wes, if you can double check, it looks like we've got a few people asking if they'd have to have a separate contract for non-emergency. So if you can let me know, then we can get an answer back out to the group.
Yeah, what we did discuss some months ago about that is that if they wanted to elect to have that higher metric bundle, they could then go back maybe to direct to ECATS to have that specific thing added to them. Although that sounds a little complicated, if you ask me. We're kind of splitting service providers for the base level, then one for the optional level. So let me get back with Tiffany, and Tim will have to kind of explore what's the best way to maybe resolve that if you're used to having reports now that do have those non-emergency trunks tracked.
And this is Daryl. While it would be certainly convenient to include everything in it, I think we're probably on a little bit shakier ground to include non-emergency call tracking in a basic emergency service tariff from a regulatory point of view as well.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of a domino theory. We want to, just to that point, Daryl, we want to provide the essentials, but we have to be careful about adding the other things that might be construed as not essential. Where do we stop? We have to draw a line someplace here.
Okay, well, Wes, if you'll get that clarification and provide that, then we can at least, inform the group so they know. Joseph, I see you've got your hand raised.
I'm sorry, was that for me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, historically, before we were reimbursing PSAPs for tariff charges through the statewide surcharge, I believe the old 911 tariff and other tariffs have had, basic requirements that everybody gets, and then optional levels that people could order. And unless, and I don't have at the top of my head all the provisions in the statute, but unless the PUC feels it's constrained that everything in the tariff would have to be reimbursed through the statewide surcharge, what we could do is have a base level that's included as that everybody gets, and then an optional level that people would pay out of their own pocket and not be reimbursed for. We've also asked for that with respect to the last mile facilities from the serving interest office and serving in office to the PSAP. And that would be a way of handling it, and also of maybe get a better pricing, because we're essentially negotiating with the whole state as a potential customer.
So Joe, this is Daryl. If there were services that can only be offered by CenturyLink, they're the only ones that can offer it because it's so closely tied to the ESInet. I think you can make an argument for that, but including optional services that could be offered by other people outside the tariff, including that in the tariff, I think creates some potential issues for us, because it can be seen as anti-competitive.
Hey Wes, this is Rich Johnston. So I'm communicating with Tiffany over IM here, and the way she described it is any call that's captured by the CPE CDR. So in my mind, if those admin calls are being processed through the CPE, then it's being captured in the CDRs, then it would be covered through this reporting that's being offered. We'll get confirmation, but I just want to let you know what I immediately found out.
Well, that's good news.
So this may be a non-issue.
It may be a non-issue.
Okay.
Let's hope so.
Thanks for that information, Rich. Kimberly, I saw that you had your hand up before, Matt. Did you have anything to add?
No, it was already covered. Thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome, Matt.
Same here, thanks.
Of course. Okay, well, that sounds good. We'll get confirmation that those admin lines coming in the CPE would be included. Anything else about the tariff amendment? All right, next on the agenda, we have some updates. Wes, do you have an update on text?
The text is, we did get approval from Entrada to go ahead and incorporate that. They've just recently submitted some pricing for the conversion of that. If you want to take the current text that you might have with Entrada and then switch it over to run down the digital span for the ESInet. And I will get some pricing out to the group and we can post that out. Now, is this still considered to be, obviously it would be part of the Jim, a tariff amendment? I think there was some back and forth on that. It obviously would have to be, I assume, Daryl, correct?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
The text to 911 would be incorporated into an amendment as well, but it's optional for people to use it or not. Isn't that what we were talking about on the 24th? Some people might choose to stay where they are with, you know, whatever they have as far as texting.
Right. It would be, yeah, what we talked about was it would be available to everybody because everybody's paying for it, but you wouldn't have to necessarily turn it on in your 911 center if you prefer to get your text to 911 a different way. And even though everybody's paying for it, everybody would also be getting reimbursed for it through the state 911 surcharge.
It does involve, of course, tweaking your CPE and their associated costs with that, which we don't control. So a little bit different thing to step up for text to 911 than it is for ECATs, which is a very easy thing to deploy.
All right, any other updates about text, Wes?
Well, you know, for those that would like it, would you guys just send me an email if you're interested in that? And then we will turn that around as what it looks like for you. If you're a brand new text to 911 to the ESInet, or if you're an existing Entrada text customer currently.
Wes, I just thought of another question that I don't know if the discussion has gone this far down the road, but would there be a requirement that anybody purchase an additional concurrent session to run those text messages across, or would they use the existing concurrent sessions?
The existing one.
And that would not impact the number of 911 calls they can take at a time, as in addition to their text?
Not such a spotty digital link to text across. No, I have not heard that it would put any kind of bandwidth stress on the existing configuration of their sessions.
Yeah, the overhead that we have built in will cover, it's minimal bandwidth on these texts. So the overhead that's built in for currently will cover that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Kimberly?
I think Kimberly had a question. Sorry.
I just got a little confused. So you wanted to know who would be interested in text over the ESInet?
Correct.
So I guess what's the intent on knowing who's interested? Because I thought we were trying to move that way to pass data on the ESInet. Therefore, it would be available. It would be a state offering. And then whether people choose to keep their other circuits, like I would probably choose if I was able to create diversity, I would have to talk to Entrado how that would work. That way I have text coming in on the ESInet, but also text coming in on my outside circuit for diversity purposes. So I guess I'm just trying to understand the intent of saying who would be interested, because I think that's kind of within scope of what the next step is on the ESInet, or am I just not tracking that?
I don't know if your equipment can take two different ports or what access to have texting from one type of service delivery as opposed to another. But what I want to get and share with Entrado is how many folks would be coming over, Kimberly, that's all. So we can look at the differences from a brand new customer as opposed to one that's existing.
I think there's multiple ways we can approach it too, Wes. There would be different configurations and possible charges that if it's a new customer versus an existing customer. So I think that would be good to understand that. But we could we can have all the pricing out there, that if you're situation one where you're where you're migrating an existing solution over, it's this pricing, versus if you're a net new customer. So we could do either. It'd be a nice to understand how many we're going to do that, but I think we could do either.
So, Rich, are you also able then take a look at those folks like us that have
Mhm.
integrated text in our Viper, but we are delivering that with our network connection outside of the ESInet to understand if we would have those options for diversity? Because I think there's several deployments in Colorado that have integrated text in their CPE.
Mhm.
And yes, they may switch that over, be able to take down their entire network, but other folks may want to opt to be able to have a separate network path that's different than the VoIP or the voice path for that diversity.
I took that away from our last meeting, and I did some initial investigation, Kimberly, and it's not available today. So and I can kind of go through from a high level as to why that is. When the text is sent from the TCC, let's say into the Lumen infrastructure, then it will have multiple paths to get to that piece of IP over MPLS, right? Like it does today. If those paths fail, the system is designed to then look at the alternate paths set up in either the Lumen infrastructure or the TCC infrastructure. Right now, it's not configurable to take an alternate IP path through which Intrado only supports, which is that VPN internet path. So I guess the short version is that is not designed yet. If that's a formal request, then we'll have to go into a formal design phase of that and price it out and see if it's possible. I did look into it, but the way it's designed today, it's a no. Not saying that something couldn't be designed, but it's not available today.
And I know it's hard to anticipate what would cause a voice outage in the Lumen network, but there have been several times where we've encountered some sort of outage and we're able to advertise, if you can't call 911, that you can text 911 for various reasons if there's an outage in that 911 network. So I guess what I would like to see with whatever offering is just a little description on if text would still be able to work if we have some sort of outage in that voice network.
Sure. And today, the way it's designed is no. We can't use an alternate non-Lumen provided network as an alternate path.
Okay.
Now, again, we can design. When I talk to my engineers, they say we can design anything. I can make this router stand up and dance if you want me to, but it would take. It's not available today. So if that's a formal request, I need to figure out what side of the house. It would be probably additional cost to figure that out. Not to figure that out, to implement that, because now it's a network that's managed by Intrado, not Lumen, because Intrado manages that internet VPN link, not Lumen. Or we could talk about if Lumen wants to get involved in that as well. It's an undertaking, but we can look into it more formally if you would like.
Well, I would assume that we're not alone in this, where when other folks have encountered some sort of outage in the voice path with the 911 network, that they've also advertised if you can't call and reach 911 that you can text, and along with maybe providing a 10-digit number to be able to reach into dispatch. So as we look at diversity in Colorado and we start to tackle diversity issues, I think this is really relevant to that conversation. But I guess I toss it back to the ESInet group too to see what they think about this, so it's not just a LEDA issue.
And Kimberly, this is not the most elegant solution, but because I know that everybody prefers to have the integrated solution, but if it's only serving as a backup in case the voice network goes down, some PSAPs may consider going with an over-the-top solution for their backup, and over a browser-based solution, which are less expensive as well.
So I'll do this. I'll take a more formal look at it and formally request that of our text side of the house and see if I'll get some traction with it. Yeah, let me do that and I'll report back at the next meeting. I just want to let you know, at least initially, I did ask the questions and it's not immediately available because we're dealing with two different, we have the TCC environment, we have the Lumen environment, we have the Lumen integrated IP infrastructure, and we have the Intrado TCC VPN IP infrastructure. So it wasn't immediately available. I kind of put the brakes on it there just to circle back with you folks. But I'll ask for a more formal investigation on it.
Thanks, Rich. I know I would appreciate that. And Daryl, I think you bring up also an excellent point. There are several other vendors out there that are moving in that direction of being able to take a text to 911 with their video solutions, inbound text to 911 and outbound text. And so there's opportunities, I guess, if everyone decides we want to move with text over the ESInet and Intrado can't provide two different paths for that delivery, then or not can't, just isn't able to at this time, I think is probably a better way to put that than maybe we just look at those over the top solutions. But thanks.
Thanks, Kimberly. We appreciate that. Looks like there is some support in chat for that. So Rich, if you could get that together by next month, I'll make sure it's on the agenda for discussion. And then also Wes will be looking for those figures that you said you'd send out to the group. So I'll put a note for that as well.
Thank you.
Before we move on, any other questions about text? All right, Wes, you're up again. The next item on the agenda is spatial call routing and the Intrado gap analysis offering.
Yeah, hey, Daryl, I sent you a couple of PDFs right before the call. If I don't know if you can incorporate those on the screen. One is the announcement from Intrado that they can do an in-depth gap analysis and looking at all the different layers that can formulate a report and the accuracy. And then here's the report itself. So we can talk about, this is a report, actually, thank you, Kimberly, from Lita, that has gone through that. And yeah, behind it, Daryl has got the, basically the language that it is that they plan on covering and what do they do on this spatial data analysis and the following layers. And those are itemized here from the address points, the boundary lines, and all those different layers basically, and getting the alley to the GIS MSAG updated to the 98%, or whatever that standard is that's agreed upon. And you can see the metric report will include those following following 6 reports: readiness, process, documented data standards, the data validation report, data analysis recommendations, reference documentation for I3, and the conclusion, the next steps to go on to uploading and that sort of things. So this is really on basically the pathway that is needed to keep marching towards the I3. And I think maybe, Rich, let's take a look at the report that Kimberly so kindly offered to share with the group here as the takeaway from this assessment and what that report looks like on the metrics there. And something's blocking. There you go. When it looks like it touches all these different ports from the EMS, the emergency zones, fire law, PSAP, road center line points, and the various sites, and what errors it found. And the road center line, it looks like, was perhaps the biggest one that was corrected. But overall, I think that's probably a good report. And maybe Kimberly, if you could kindly maybe summarize the findings that this was done by Intrado for your centers. What do you see as your takeaway there on this?
Yeah, so a couple of pieces. So we have been in-house as our dedicated GIS for 911, and he worked with Intrado, but has the tools and was able to do this report using the tools. So it was a great process. The reason why it was so beneficial was you develop your data and you believe you know what you need, and you believe you're developing the data based on the standards that are outlined but how workable your data is and if it's meeting the mark is just that question we had. So this gap analysis let us know where we were and where we needed to go, and also let us dive in deeper to specific areas. So this was the report when Ben just first got access to the tools, did the report to look at where our data was at. And then from there, he was able to then focus and target more on the issues to close that gap and dive even deeper and really take a look through those tools at the data. So what was also great is in the tools that you're changing your data versus having to use the tools that aren't even part of the Intrado offering. So we also looked at outside tools, and it just was nice to have the Intrado tools all part of everything MSAG related and being able to work on the data right there with those tools. So it was a really good process, and he's going to run another report today since I asked him for this, and we'll see all the changes that were made from those critical errors. But you'll see not bad. I mean, 431 out of all of our roads, it was really good.
And a couple
What
of
constitutes
comments.
to a match rate, Kimberly, if you, can it be summarized that way on your, as a match rate percentage?
So let me jump in here. So a couple things on this. Yeah, the road center line I would say is the most critical error. That's the most common. That's the most common type of errors. Don Compton's on, and he can kind of talk. This is just one of the many reports. We provide much more detailed reports as well. This is kind of an overview of when we load that into our spatial database. Don, can you kind of talk towards a couple of the other specific reports that we do and the data that's shared with the GIS authority? Don, are you on? I'm sorry, you might be on mute. He's having, I can see him where I am. He's having trouble joining. But there, again, I'll go high level, and then once Don figures it out, he can give you some more detail. But these are, so the types of error analysis is we do an ALI to GIS validation and comparison, and that's where we get that match rate. So, you know, Nina has that 98% match rate recommendation. That's where you can see your actual match rate between the ALI data itself and the actual road center line and address point information. So that's an additional report. There are these reports will give line by line and will actually show each individual error for the PSAP to look at and to work and to figure out whether or not the GIS side of the house, the address point information is correct, the road center line information is correct, or the ALI information is correct. So that the PSAP can work either by itself, the authority itself, or work with the MSAG coordinator to get those resolved and reload. Don, were you able to join?
Yeah, I got it worked out.
Okay. Did I say anything incorrect so far?
Not so far. You're doing good. Yeah, so go ahead and continue, and if there's additional questions, I'll be happy to jump in.
Somebody asked about match rate. Would the way to calculate that would be to divide the critical errors by the number that proceeded to production and then subtract that from 1?
So this, and God, correct me if I'm wrong. So this is the report that shows loading to the actual EGDMS, which is our GIS spatial interface. There is a separate report, Daryl, that gives that match rate specifically. So that would be the report. You can see this. It should align with that somewhat, but these are more spatial errors than ALI to GIS comparison errors. Don, am I right saying that?
Yeah, that's right. What you see here, this is a report that that is generated automatically when you upload to one of our systems called EGDMS. But what we're specifically talking about in the reports that Rich is talking about, it's a separate thing. And we would be taking your data and then doing complete analysis to find out, what sort of shape your road center lines you're in, your address points, your boundaries, are all the required layers there for I3 and next gen, and do you have any issues you should deal with there? And then beyond that, then we're also doing a comparison of your road center lines to alley records and address points to alley records, just to see how well things are matching up. So for that, it's simply, we have, let's say we have, to make it simple, 100 alley records, 95 of them match, so we have a 95% match rate. It's that simple for the match rate. But it's a whole different set of reports, and we'll outline what we're finding as far as, the fields. Do you have the proper fields that are necessary? Do you have all the layers that are necessary? What sort of errors we found that should be addressed or should be looked at? And then we do the comparison of alley to road center line as well.
And just to add on to that a little bit, as a GIS authority goes through this process, we work hand in hand with that designated resource of the GIS authority. So we'll work with them to get the data points we need. We'll work with Lumen to pull the alley information we need for the comparisons. We'll walk them through every one of the reports during this process. The GIS authority has a dedicated representative from Entrado that will take them from start to finish. So it's a fully serviced and supported solution with dedicated resources until we get to that point of delivering the reports and helping you interpret them.
Hey, Daryl, you might want to put that other document back up from Entrado to outline the parameters of the report, and especially those. Hey, Don, I guess the report, including the match rate thing, that's part of these 6 reports that will be the summary?
That's correct. That's correct.
Just checking. Okay. Well, hey, Rich, I think we want to talk about that Entrada would certainly welcome some number of PSAPs throughout the state, 4, 6, 5, whatever that magic number might be to Entrado, to see who would like to elect to have their data be teed up with Entrado for a gap analysis. And of course, the end result of that would have to constitute certain parameters, how a certain time period, if you will, to work with Entrado to turn around that data in a reasonable fashion to be shared with the entire state. So the same thing that Kimberly's gone through, I think Entrado is looking for perhaps another 4, 5, or 6 volunteers, something of that order. Is that correct, Rich?
Yeah, half a dozen or so. What we listened to and heard from you folks over the last couple of months is we think this is important. This service and all these reports and interaction of getting I3 data ready is going to be included in the tariff as part of the onboarding. But we don't want to stop and wait until that happens. So we want to pick out 5 or 6 PSAPs over for the state of Colorado that have the resources, that have the data, that want to get started soon, and we'll immediately kick off that process with these folks, understanding that this process can take, let's say, 3 to 6 months from start to finish to get everything together, to run the reports, do the comparison, and convey the information. We wanted to get started now rather than waiting until October when all of it's on the tariff and things of that nature. So looking for interested GIS authorities that want to start to move forward, that have the time. And I think, Matt, you could probably talk towards this. It does take some time to not only help get this data together, but then to review it and take it in. So if Wanted to throw it out to this group. If there's 5 or 6 PSEPs that want to get started now rather than waiting longer and for it to be on the tariff, we want to get started.
Rich, thank you for that. Matt, I need to ask you a question. The purpose of all of this is to assess our readiness, correct?
Yes.
And-
Well, no. Yes and no. What's being discussed here is the part of the onboarding process when we actually spin this up, right? And so the early gap analysis that we could benefit from Intrado would be those 4 to 6 PSAPs and GIS authorities that would sort of be test beds in Colorado for this report that we're, like the example that the leader report that we're already looking at.
So would your suggestion to be to solicit for interest and then select those PSAPs based on size so we get a good data set? I mean, is there merit to that?
I think I would go with what Intrado is suggesting in terms of PSAPs and GIS authorities that have the data and the staff right now that are ready to go with testing.
Okay. Does anybody else have any feedback on the offering from Intrado?
Yeah, I had a question. This is Jerry from Summit. Is there, and I apologize if you guys give this these technical requirements or whatever, but is there a list of what Intrado is asking for, just in case a PSAP might meet those requirements? Then they can apply to see if they could become one of those 5 or 6 PSAPs that want their data analyzed or whatever.
We can more formally put that together. It's in essence that if you look at the first, let's say 5 items on the list, that you have all of those layers put together, that you have RCLs, address points, PSAP boundary layer, emergency service boundary layers, and your provision boundary layer put together in somewhat in good shape. We will work with Lumen to get authority to pull that ALI and MSAG information. Now, obviously, we would need your approval for that. So we may have to grab a letter of authorization to get that information. The other thing that we're looking for is your time. So not only, we want to work through this process with you, we want to be able to explain it, and we want understanding eventually that whatever data gaps are found, that we would want you to move forward and make those changes and eventually rerun that data and get it loaded into our database, assuming that you're going to move to I3, within let's say the next 12 to 24 months. So it's really just your resource time and your availability to work with us to get us what we believe you need.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's good information. So I just wanted to make sure that these are the requirements, that top part, and then we reach out to, who do we reach out to if we're interested?
Well, Jerry, just go ahead and send it to me, and feel free to send it directly to Rich as well, and we'll get those teed up.
Okay.
Jerry, I'm gonna change that, Jerry. Sorry, I'll get you. I'll respond to the form. Bob Eckenrod is our lead salesperson for this, and he'll manage it kind of along with Wes. So I'll get you his name and contact information along with Wes's.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Jerry, this is Matt. A good place to start is the NINA NG911 GIS data model, which you can download from the Task Force GIS Committee's webpage. There's a link to it in the chat.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. There's
a bunch of other 911 GIS related documents that are also downloadable from that webpage.
Oh, I see.
We also have a GIS roles and responsibilities document, which is something we usually give a PSAP when they sign up for I3, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't give that now. So that gives a lot of information about internal process and procedures that the PSAP may want to consider, how the data needs to be formatted, when it needs to be loaded into the spatial interface. So I'll get a copy of that out to the group as well.
All right, that sounds great. Thanks, Rich. Anything else on the spatial call routing, Wes?
No, I think that pretty well sums it up. And I just put into the chat window for Jerry and others to look at Bob Eckenrod's email.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. It looks like the next item on the agenda, we already covered the area code overlay earlier with Tracy. Looks like we're on the Entrado Alley hardware update. Vicky, are you on the line?
Vicky just left. It looks like a couple minutes ago. I think she had to jet for a top of the hour meeting, apparently.
All right, Daryl, did you get anything from Vicky?
Not on that topic.
Okay.
I do see Matt has his hand up though.
Oh, Matt, go ahead.
Sorry, I did have one lingering question about the GIS data. My understanding was the GeoMSAG that we're headed towards was GIS road centerline based, but I'm seeing site structure address points in the list of these reports. And so I'm wondering, is that GeoMSAG actually going to consume and use more than just road center lines?
Matt, that's a good question. As of when we started this process, the MSAG portion of this was road centerline based, although there are address points within the GIS spatial information. And when we do in an I3 world, when we geocode a record, we always use the address point to do that geocoding. We are going through a modification on our side to include address point GeoMSAGs. It's in process right now. So let me verify whether or not we can kind of go back and re-include that feature into what is already kind of started here with Colorado. Let me get back to you on that. But
that would be fantastic.
Yeah, that's the feedback we've been getting with this. So as part of, again, it's part of this TDMS service, which includes onboarding GeoMSAG and then ongoing service management. We've been getting that request quite often recently for the GeoMSAG portion to be able to do address point MSAG. So let me, again, this is relatively new. This is an alley database that is done in cooperation with Lumen. So I need to talk with that side of the house. It's definitely, I would say it's definitely on the roadmap to do. Whether or not it would be initially or not, that's what I need to get some clarification.
Okay, thanks, Rich. I personally would advocate strongly for us including the precision of address points in our GeoMSAG service.
All right. Thank you for your feedback, Matt. We appreciate that. It looks like the next item on the agenda is billing. Does anyone have any items that require the attention of this group that they have not been able to resolve? Okay, perfect. Well, if you do have something that just comes up, just make sure that you reach out to Wes for that. All right, on to our open discussion. The next is questions from PSAPs to or authorities to Lumen. If anyone on the call has anything about the ESInet, the projects, or where we're going, this is your time to address those concerns. Okay. And how about Lumen to PSAPs or authority? Do you guys have anything else additional that we need to discuss?
This is Wes. I do not at this time.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. And on to public comment. Anyone that is on the call that is a non-voting member, this is your time to provide any items you'd like us to consider. All right. Well, does anybody have any last minute items that they would like to discuss or bring before the group? All right. Well, thank you so much for being here and contributing. We are adjourned at 11:07. Have a great day.
Thanks, Dana.
Everybody.